So I've worked at 7 banks on 2 continents. You can probably hear from my accent, I'm not a local, although I reside now in Boston. I'm now very much a US citizen, so we're all brothers and sisters. But
you sound like you're from Boston.
I'm trying my best.
Just like it.
I was going to say I'm trying my best not to pick up the accent, but that's just going to piss off at least 50 buddies and most of my wife's family, because this is her area. So, and the last thing I want to do is alienate myself,
Yeah,
But,
not there.
But I spent a good portion of my time in banks, and I actually jumped into banking straight from school. So I never went to university. So at 18, I left school, got into my first bank. So this is like 30 years ago, and bounced around a number of organizations, mostly at what we call GSIBs, like globally systemic, like the large banks, large global banks that make a difference. If they go bust, then that kind of cripples the world. And I think it'd be fair to say that I got a little bit, I'm trying to be a little bit careful about how I say this, but just a little bit concerned about just the way that sometimes banks look after their clients. Mm-hmm. I will say this: look, we're not bank bashers at Green Shoots FX any way, shape, or form. Right? We all need banks for some level, right? Whether that's warehousing your funds or buying other ancillary services or whatever it might be. And also, we're big fans of community banks and regional banks and credit unions, and we do our best to actually try and support them as much as we possibly can. So, a buddy of mine and I, we jumped ship from the big bank mentality to create Green Shoots FX, just because we know that there are many businesses out there, North American businesses in particular, versus maybe European businesses, that are just not getting that level of advice, guidance. They're not getting the products. They're certainly not getting the pricing from their bank that they probably deserve. So pricing wise, you could be paying for foreign exchange anything from like 2 to 4% above market rate when you go to a bank. And you won't know that because you're maybe you're a CFO, maybe you're a controller, a business owner. You have 1,000 things on your to-do list. You've got an invoice in euro. You just launch that off to your bank and say, look, just pay that because I've got a ton of other shit to deal with over here. And you're not paying attention to the rate. You're not paying attention to like how much is effectively going to be debited, and you're not making a compare and contrast to what's the real rate in the market. So invariably, you might get stung for like 2 to 4%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that is a lot over the course of time. And like I can give an example where, like we spoke to a prospect a couple of weeks back. I won't name them or the bank, but they're shifting a good like $3 to $5 million a month converted into euro, and they showed me the pricing of their bank, and we save them 50 grand a month, which is not a small amount of money. And that's a kind of a rarity to be able to save somebody that amount of money. But that 5, 6, $700,000 a year, that's more than enough to stop Bob from being furloughed in your warehouse, and that's more than enough if you needed to upgrade your systems, and that's more than enough for many other kind of financial expenses that you might have in a year. So I'm going a bit off topic, but so essentially, what are we? We're a foreign exchange global payments platform, and there's many of us out there, believe it or not. But we designed the company and we started the company because, like I say, we wanted to make sure that businesses had access to good pricing when it comes to foreign exchange, no matter what size of business you are. I don't care if you're a $1 billion company. We have a product that we can stand up in front of a $1 billion company and not embarrass ourselves. I mean, I can embarrass myself, but like the product and the business, it is going to stand up. But we have small clients as well. We have somebody who might shift like £1,000 to the UK every other month. Now we save them about $5. I probably don't even make money on that. In fact, I know I don't make money on that. But it's not about us specifically making money. It's about us giving access to somebody that doesn't ordinarily have the ability to demand a better price. And in many cases, they can't even get access to foreign exchange because banks are like, look, I want a minimum of 50 grand of revenue from you. This is going to generate $5. I've got no interest. So, we're there for that. But also, and I'm not going to let you get a word in edgewise here, Dan. I do apologise, but providing that advice and guidance on best practices, like it's amazing to me, like here in the US versus Europe, the number of CFOs that we speak to that say we don't have any foreign exchange payment needs. We buy all of our widgets from Germany and we pay in US dollars. So thanks very much. See you later. And that's when we have to kind of grab them before they put the phone down and say, yeah, actually, you do have a foreign exchange payment need. Why are you paying in dollars to Germany? They don't want dollars in Germany. They want euros. And so in order to quote you US dollars, they're going to inflate that dollar value by anything up to 7% because they have the foreign exchange risk. They're taking it from you. They're adding it to themselves. So they got to manage that. So when you pay them in 90 days, $100,000, they don't know what that's going to be in euro because they might not have access to the forward market. So they're going to manage their own foreign exchange risk by inflating that dollar value. So instead of quoting you 95 grand, they're going to quote you 100,000. So the rule of thumb is typically if you're paying in dollars, more often than not, you're probably paying about 7% more than you should than paying in euro.
Is this in most countries, Mark?
This is mostly like for, I would say specifically the US market. European CFOs have got it down more. I'd say, look, if we lined up 1,000 US CFOs, controllers, finance managers right here, right now, I would guess 950 of them are paying in dollars, and 50 of them are actually using the currency markets. If you go to Europe and have 1,000 CFOs, I'd wager you probably got maybe 600 that are using the foreign exchange market, and probably 40% are actually paying in their currency.
So is this the same thing if you were to talk Mexico or China?
Yeah, so Mexico, so interesting you picked those two countries. So China, I would say a significant volume of transactions that go into China are in US dollars. And in China, there is a craving for US dollars. It's a massively stable currency, of course. And China will also have obligations in US dollars. So therein is what you're looking at is called a natural hedge. So they're selling in dollars, but they're also themselves maybe sourcing some components in US dollars. So there's no point in them necessarily invoicing you in CNY, in Chinese yuan, and then they've got to reconvert that back into dollars for some of the obligations that they have or something like that. But more often than not, there is a conversion that's going on at the other end.
Okay, and then what about
the same for Mexico? Yeah, pretty much the same for Mexico as well. But I would say you're more likely to get a conversion into peso at the other end than retaining it in US dollars. I mean,
when
the dollar
I was at an
in Mexico.
Yeah. Okay. When I was at an asset-based company, it was the first time I actually got exposed to currency exchange outside of a bank. And I can remember vividly because we brought the company from 23 trucks to 156 trucks. And when we were about that 100 truck mark, I remember a guy coming in, walking by my office with the president, going and sitting in, and then coming back out, and he was like shaking his hand, and he came in my office, and he said, we just struck a really good deal on exchange. And I went, what are you talking about? He goes, well, like most of our customers pay in US funds. I said, yeah. He goes, now we need a US fund bank for fuel and all that kind of stuff. He goes, but we don't need it all. So we need to convert it to Canadian. And I always just thought, well, just go to a bank and convert it. Like, and he goes, no, I'm making like 4 points better, 5 points better. He goes, I just transferred $250,000 US to Canadian. I made an extra 4 or 5 points at that point he was making on it. And I was like, and of course, immediately I'm like doing the math. I'm like, holy crap. He goes, yeah. So I think it's a huge market. And I'm sure, we have a lot of business owners and stuff that watch the show. I'm sure they're already doing it, but I like the fact that you said, well, we pay dollar for dollar, because that was one of my questions when it came to exchanges. So many different countries accept US currency. It's almost like the global currency.
Mm-hmm.
However, I was totally unaware that there is going to be some kind of foreign exchange buffer they put in there. I guess like you would normally if you're Canadian and you're charging or if you're US and your client's paying you Canadian funds. I mean, you're at some points 35, 37%, on the dollar that you're having to figure out. And in the US, you probably have a lesser need. I don't even know if that's a word, but less of a need for
It is now.
Canadian currency. It is
Yeah.
now. Yeah.
So yeah. Look, I mean, I think there's the issue really kind of does start here in the US. So you're looking to source some material, again, raw materials from Germany. I keep using Germany because we do a lot of transactions to Germany.
Go for it. Yeah.
So you're a US buyer of raw materials. It's just it's your default to just say, please give me a quote, and you're probably even saying, please give me a quote in US dollars. Now, I would also sort of argue that the German exporters kind of adding then to some of the confusion there, because they should really be pushing back and saying, yeah, I'm going to quote you in dollars, but how about if I also quote you in euro as well? More often than not, they just won't, because they're, I mean, and I say this with the best kind of like love and affection to the US. Like, again, resident brothers and sisters. Many European exporters will probably even not even think about saying, look, do you want to quote in euro? Because their perception of the US is, you don't even know what the euro is, so I'm not even going to talk to you about it. And even if you know what euro is, you're probably not going to be able to source it through your bank anyway. So yeah, look, I'll just quote you in dollars and we'll just have at it. But they will be marking it up. I mean, at the end of the day, like a German exporter has banking facilities in euro. They're paying their workers in euro. They have utilities in euro. They're sourcing probably some of their products from other cheaper European euro nation countries, euro nations. And so, of course, they're going to want to have euro, but they also want to make sure that they get the sell. And so they'll quote in US dollars because it's a currency, obviously, we understand here. But regretfully, there's probably that 7% buffer that's in there that it shouldn't be.
And that's a big market. If you're talking 1,000 and like on average 950 won't really like understand to pay can save 7%. I mean, that to me, if you buy all your product overseas, I got tons of customers that always buy their product in most European Union places.
Right.
It'd be interesting to have the conversation with them to see if they are paying in Canadian dollar or US dollars, or Canadian dollars, or transferring to Canadian dollars to pay them instead of transferring to euro to pay them. I mean, there's so many different loops and areas to go to. That's interesting. So before we go any further, share with everybody how they can get a hold of you, because I do think having somebody like you as a tool in their tool belt can be so helpful. I mean, even to like I said at the beginning, even to a point where if you're messing with 1, 2, 5, 6, 7%, hey, I can help you in this area as well, not just in logistics.
Yeah. So in order to get hold of me, you can either reach out through email. So it's mark.ridley@greenshootsfx.com. Our website is greenshootsfx.com. We have our LinkedIn page. Usually contains a significant amount of information. We try and push out as much as we possibly can across social media, certainly when it comes to blogs on best practices, for example. But we as much as we sit there and we're trying to solve for the financial side of the supply chain, we try and add, I think we were talking about this before we jumped on air, or you were alluding to it. For us, it's a lot more than just the financial side of the supply chain. So we'll talk to a CFO and we'll let okay, so we've just sold for your foreign exchange transactions, bringing stuff in from Germany, but how are you getting that into the US? Like, what Incoterms are you using? What lanes are you using? Have you actually taken a temperature check by speaking to a customs broker? What freight forwarders are you using? Do you understand what a foreign trade zone is? Do you understand what compliance issues and complexities can be around that? Do you know what a letter of credit is? And so we've spent some time building up partnerships with customs brokers and freight forwarders. Not 100 customs brokers, not 100 freight forwarders. I don't need that. But we took our time to find the right partners. And what I mean by that is they're an extension of us. And so if we say, look, go talk to Damon at Welkie Customs Brokers, for example, I can do that and pass them over knowing that I'm not going to get an angry phone call. I know that I'm also passing them over to somebody that thinks like us, which is relationship first, revenue second. And I know that sounds a bit cheesy, but that, and talk is cheap, but that's exactly how we operate.
It's
Like,
people before profit, brother.
Well, absolutely. And so we'll spend a ton of time, as will Damon, as will our other partners, just being excited about talking about our products. And if you end up then going back to your incumbent and beating them up and getting a better price, we see that as a moral victory. It's not a financial one. It's not going to pay the school fees, but it's a moral victory nonetheless, right? And we're helping drive down that price in the market. But we often, not often, but we always hope that because we've brought certain things to a prospect's attention, that they're going to reward us with loyalty rather than rewarding their bank, who's been ripping them off for the last 10 years, or the customs broker has been ripping off for the last 10 years. But like I say, we're more about the overall kind of holistic relationship. And I referenced supply chain. In fact, Dan, I think there was something that you posted a while back, and it was a good quote, and it was very prevalent and very relevant. Where I think you said something like, and I'm paraphrasing, like look at everything that's around you, like everything that you can see, touch, and feel was shipped from A to B. And then I think you went into like, why we should look after truckers and why all this is important. And I kind of flippantly jumped in, and there was loads of comments, so I think it got lost. And I'm like, yeah, but don't forget, the financial providers, because if money doesn't flow from B to A, shit doesn't move from A to B. So we are actually part of the supply chain, whether you like it or not. So we're all kind of like in the mix together. So, and I think
I would have jumped all over that if I saw that. Now you got me interested, because you're right. I do post a lot like that, and it's the reason I really wanted to have you on, because I don't think enough sales reps, like as a sales rep, I don't think we focus enough on the financial part of our business. Like if you're an owner, and you're a solopreneur, of course, your financial is a big part of it. But when you're a sales rep working for a company, like I'll give you a perfect example. One of the companies I worked for, their average cost of invoicing was about $68, $72. So call it $70 to invoice. That means if you're not making at least $100 to $150 per load, the company's not actually making money. And you're making money as a sales rep because you get a commission. So if you do $100 or $70 a load, you get 30% commission. But the company's not making money. And I think it's an obligation for us as sales reps to understand the financial ins and outs of our company. So when I found that out, I said to my team, there is no load that moves in this department under $75. None. Yeah. And when it's $75, we consider it a break even. And even at that, I moved it up to $125 because I said, no, we can't. We have an obligation to keep our company healthy financially. And this is where I believe as a sales rep, we have the same obligation to our customers. And that's why I think you're actually a very critical part of the supply chain, because there is ways that just your company that you said, you're 50 G's a month. Listen, there's hundreds of thousands of companies out there doing that or more every month in exchange. They're buying that much product, especially in today's day and age with over 2 million TEU hitting our ports. Like everything we touched on truck, 95% of what we touch on a truck has touched a container. And that financial ring, like think about it for a second. Think about how much money financially is sitting just off the port of LA. 102 containers this morning, 102 ships this morning. On average, I think it's 265,000 containers. How much money? I was saying to I think, DJ, it might have been you yesterday or somebody. I've got a customer that ships Band-Aids. They do tone, like 60 different skin tones for Band-Aids, right? Great idea. I love it. I think it's fantastic. They've had 2 containers sitting off the port of LA for almost 10 weeks now, right? Wow. So you have 30 days to get from Asia to LA, and then you're almost 10 weeks sitting off LA. So they're almost a full quarter that money's tied up, right? Because they've paid before it's left Asia, right? Now all the steamship, all the shipping lines are like, hey, it's cost, but they haven't created one invoice for those, and think of how much product is in 2 containers of Band-Aids. Like, think of how much product is there. Like, they have not sent one invoice out. So I look at it and I say, with that kind of a delay, if I could help them with a 5, 6, 7% savings when they bought that money to pay for that product.
Exactly.
What would that, and it's just, it's every piece of our supply chain puzzle helps the next one get a little easier, and the next one get a little easier. And I don't think.
And for everybody watching this, I mean, guys, what we're doing is we're just giving you the view. So Dan, especially with what he's kind of going into, and what Mark really went into, and thank you so much, Mark, for all the info. But what they're going into, they're giving you that high level view. They're giving you that CEO view of what they're looking at. And even though us as sales reps might not think, I mean, so me being from the US, the only time I think I've ever exchanged money at all was, or even remember exchanging money, was going to Canada with my parents as a kid to Niagara Falls. So, it's not something that is irregularly focused on, especially here in America, and as as a sales rep. But then thinking of the next level and the difference it could make, guys. This is a way to, instead of dropping and always thinking the solution is dropping the rates, this is a way to kind of counteract that, keep that money in your pocket, and maybe make your company, your customer and client some money as well.
Right. And you can't, sorry Dan, just to jump in there, certainly for the last 18 months, you can't open up and scroll down more than 2 posts on LinkedIn without seeing somebody talking about the cost of freight, right, and the cost of a container. And that's kind of like, this is where I then sort of sit back in my chair, and I feel like I just want to go to Home Depot and buy a pallet of bricks and build a brick wall and just perpetually smash my face into it, because I'm like, I get it's a ball ache and it's a pain in the ass, but you're bitching and moaning about something that you can't control. But what you can control is what you've paid for that stuff that's inside the container. So you're moaning that and rightly so, you should be, that it's gone from 2 to 4 to 20 grand for a container, but you might have been overpaying for that container 50 grand each and every time. So let's focus on the stuff that you can control and help you sleep better at night. And then we can all like have a beer and bitch and moan about the price of containers going up, but at least we've now offset some of that by paying less for what's inside the box.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the whole thing, right? And before we go any further, guys, sorry, Jeff, good morning, my friend. Austin, good morning. And then Jeff's come back, and this is interesting because I actually was not aware of this, Jeff. Jeff's saying there's 1 million containers sitting outside of LA and Long Beach. That's like 3 times more than I had data on. So I'll have to definitely, thanks for sharing that, Jeff, because now that's just quadrupled the amount of money sitting offshore for people. And you're right, Mark. If we can help customers pay less, in essence, right? Like, because you're buying money better, pay less, create something. I mean, I look at it and I say, just in your Germany scenario, if you avoid the 7%, plus it costs you, say, 3% to get the money, right? You're saving 4% on everything you buy over there. And to me, if you're spending hundreds of millions of dollars buying product, that's a big number, man. That's a big number.
I would say, again, this is a bit rule of thumb rather than applying to each and every case. But typically, what we do find, I mentioned that earlier on. So if you're buying product, particularly if you're buying it from Euroland, right, from the single currency area, and actually, pretty much anywhere other than China, you probably are overpaying by about 7%. If you're, and again, I'm trying not to be a bank basher, but if you are sending your invoices off to your bank to do the foreign exchange conversion, typically we end up saving businesses 2 to 2.5%. So to put that in real money, every time you convert $100,000, you should be paying $98,000, not $100,000 for that same invoice. And I think my dad, for example, he is never in a million years going to use a company like us. He's never going to use a fintech. He's like, I trust my banks. I've been using banks since I was, this big. Banks are like, I'm like, dude, do me a favor, open up any paper and you'll see some banks in there for doing some shit they shouldn't have been doing. So don't, just be mindful of that. And also just be mindful, Dad, that, we're still, from a risk perspective, we're as good as the banks that we use. So, and we still have to use banks, but the difference is I understand the global payment infrastructure, and I understand how banks buy from each other, and I understand how they route funds. So that means that when I go to my banking partners, not one of them pulls the wool over my eyes. Not one of them is able, I choose specific banks because they go in a route that I want because it's the most efficient, and it's not just the most efficient financially, but it's the most efficient from a customer service perspective. So it means that if anything does go wrong with the transaction, there's only one bank in the chain that I can deal with, rather than when you go to your bank and you say, please pay euros to wherever, there might be 4 banks in that chain. So if the beneficiary claims non-receipt, you go to your bank, who goes to that bank, who then goes to that bank, who then investigates, who then goes back to that bank, who then goes back to that bank, who comes back to your bank, who then comes to you. So instead of having a week's worth of turnaround, let's find out where that money is in less than 24 hours. Let's improve that customer service, that efficiency.
See, that's another thing as well, because how much downtime now in that week, in that week they didn't get it. Now you might miss the sailing. There's a lot of things that can happen in 7 days, like a lot.
There's exactly that. And what you don't realize is that, you even if you're spending 5 minutes investigating that, you don't realize this, but your mind's taken off of other things. Even though 100%. You're only spending 5 minutes here, you then turn back to what you were doing. You're like, right, okay, where was I at? I was like mid calculation. So let's just, pick that up. There's so much inefficiency and time wasted.
Well, but they say on average, you lose 15 minutes every transition. So if you're not prepared for a transition, so say you're in the middle of doing a presentation and you allow a distraction to take over, it's typically a 15-minute loss before you can get back into the zone of that presentation. And if you lose half an hour a day, that's 4.5 weeks of productivity at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And think of that for a second, like 2.5 full work weeks of productivity at the end of the year, just from 20, 30 minutes a day. And so to me, you lose a week, you lose all that productivity, because you're frustrated. Like, why aren't these people getting the information? So call it 30 minutes a day you're losing. So you're losing almost half a day's productivity. You could be losing the sailing. If you lose the sailing, you could be losing the price on the actual container that's sailing, right? So now you're not only losing that, you're losing the price. So now your cost might go up $2-3 because you didn't meet that pricing structure. Especially in overseas now, I get a price and my guy says, Dan, they're telling me, even just now they're saying it's 31st is when price changes. 4 days ago, the prices changed by $300 from 4 days ago till yesterday. And it's a $300 switch. And my guy's like, we just got to lock it down. And my conversation to customers consistently is, you need to lock it down now. Well, is it going to sail? If you lock it down now, we will get the sailing. It'll be booked on the boat. If you don't lock it down now, this price is valid for 4 hours. And I'm literally putting a 4-hour timeline on my costing, because I'm not interested in having a debate and wasting my time and losing 30 minutes a day. But if you're talking about buying money or, whatever it is, that is an addition to it, especially as a Canadian company, because you're paying in US funds, right? Yeah. So every Canadian company should be talking to you that does ocean. Every single Canadian company, because we buy US currency to pay for ocean. Everything is US funds, right? Yeah. Like, to me, when I was in the asset side, 85% of our customers were in the US. Either US brokers for kind of the one-off load coming home, whatever the case may be. The amount of US currency that came into our company was incredible compared to Canadian. And even Canadian companies were saying, can I pay you in US funds? Because they don't want to deal with the exchange. Or at that point, they didn't want to deal with the exchange. But for me, Mark, I'm sitting there and I'm saying, your gold mine is Canada, because 90% of Canada buys from the US or deals in US funds, because if they buy from Asia, it's US funds. They don't want Canadian funds. So we're converting rate money all the time. Good morning, Gary. I know there's Gary, you're late,
Good
Gary.
morning,
Come on.
Gary.
You must be in trucking. So Jeff went back. I guess there are anywhere from 10,000 to 21,000 TEU on any one of those vessels. The number of vessels sitting validates this number. Okay. Oh, okay. He said he read that there's 1 million containers sitting off.
Yeah.
We got Dean coming in tomorrow. That's going to share a lot of that hardcore data with us and what's actually coming down the pipe. So that'll be interesting too. But yeah, Mark, I mean, for me, I sit there and I say you are an awesome tool for any professional sales rep to have under their belt.
Absolutely.
To say, hey, listen, what about exchange? And I mean, it's a conversation. And listen, the reality is the traffic manager probably won't know anything about it. But if you start at the C level, might be a good opportunity to talk about exchange and give Mark a call.
Well, this is so. I'll be honest with you. I think we're a little bit nerdy. This is one of those situations where I feel like the professional athlete. I'm getting paid a decent amount of money to do something which I really love and which is really more of a hobby. To be honest with you, like I've been in global transactions, global payments my entire career, and I really enjoy it. And even just to have a conversation with somebody where we can say, you know what, look, the current way you're doing it, the current pricing that you're getting from your current provider is actually pretty good. Look, we recommend that you just stick around, stay where you are. We're not interested in bringing people over just so we can make a buck. But I'll be honest with you, the only conversations we've had with businesses where I've actually said, stay where you're at, have been businesses in Europe. So like more recently, we spoke to a decent sized company in Denmark and another one in Finland, and their local banks, one of them was Nordea, one of them was Danske Bank, both providing really, really tight foreign exchange rates. And I knew that was going to be the conversation even before we jumped on the call, because certainly the Scandinavian banks really, really look after their clients in that regard. I've yet to have a conversation with a US business where I've said, stay where you're at, the pricing's great. But, again, like I said earlier on, if they then go back to their bank and beat the bank up and the bank then relents and gives them what they want, because they will, because the bank would rather take something than nothing.
Yep.
Then that's a moral victory. But, like I say, we hopefully then rely on the business and the CFO to turn around and say, well, look, thanks for bringing that to our attention. We didn't know shit before that. Let's reward you rather than rewarding the bank that kind of
you know what, in the end, you're educated, and that's what sales is.
Yeah, right? and that's it. And we love the educational piece. But just quickly coming back to the Canadian piece, Canadian banks are actually really good from a pricing perspective. Can we beat them? Yeah, we can. But what I like about the Canadian banks is they try to get the best price. Their intentions are certainly a lot better than what we sometimes witness here in the US. And again, I hate saying this because, again, we're not bank bashers. We need banks. I respect banks. I know, well, all of my friends are bankers. That's because that's been my world for 30 years, right? So, but certainly, payments from this side going into Canada, where the conversion is being done this side of the border from US into Canadian dollars, that's where we can definitely step in and help. And also, I mean, we've been talking about importers. It's the exporting side of it as well. Many exporting companies will, again, picking on Germany, will sell to Germany and will invoice in US dollars, or they'll be asked to quote, bid on a price, and they'll quote in US dollars. And so we work with companies to say, look, I think the best thing for you to do is to be invoicing, or at least be quoting in euro, be quoting in the local currency. And why is that? Because the German buyer is getting 5 quotes, 4 in euro and yours in US dollars. Well, you've just given them foreign exchange risk. So they're going to park your quote to the back, and they're going to focus on the 4 euro quotes that they've had in. So we've spoken, one of the first questions that I'll ask any exporter who's invoicing in US dollars is like, how are you tracking your losses? Like, you must be bidding all day long, and you might have 100 bids out in any 1 week, and you're winning 10% of those. Do you view that as being good? And do you know why you didn't win the other 90%? Often it comes down to, we were just a little bit too expensive. And they think they were just expensive because they were just too expensive. They didn't realize that they were too expensive because of the foreign exchange side of things. And then, of course, you get the, well, but like, I don't understand currencies, and it all sounds very confusing. We're like, no, it's not. Really, it's not. I know I work in the industry, but it's not. Let me break it down into stick figure drawings so you can understand it. And honestly, it's like a light bulb moment for many individuals.
Well, visuals are the key to learning. On every
it is for me anyway.
Visuals are awesome. I love stick figures. Gary comes back and says, "Yes, putting out fires, making deals, moving America one load at a time." Attaboy, yes, Gary. Sir. So you know what? You're allowed to be late. In closing here, Jeff says, according to Goldman Sachs, at least 24 billion in goods are stuck outside the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach alone. So then you start talking about all the other ports, and again, we can. That's a 4-hour show on its own. But DJ, pull us out of here with a quote, my friend. Let's do it.
Let's do it. Thank you again, Mark. Everybody, if you're watching this after it's live, you'll find it on YouTube. Make sure and subscribe. Click. Please follow us. Thank you for everybody who does listen. Good quote. So this is by Tim Ferriss. It isn't enough to think outside of the box. Thinking is passive. Get used to acting outside of the box.
I like that. Get a hold of Mark, my friends.
Yes, reach out to Mark.
Every tool in your
toolbox. There's a site right here.